I don't know if you remember the story about how I actually became involved in like music stuff at school.
No.
Do you remember that? Never not told you that before?
Not very
You've
well.
not read my blog.
No.
Yeah, so I was in year 2, I think, and the whole class got brought into this, one of those shipping container classrooms. You know, those...
I know the ones.
And we didn't know why we were there. And all of us were sat down on the floor, and one of our classmates, I don't know who he was, I can't remember, I was like 5. He came in and he stood at the front of the class with this instrument. It was a violin. But I didn't know what it was at the time. I was 5 years old. I was like,
okay, yeah. Fair enough.
and he started playing, and I remember, to this day, I remember being mesmerised by just what he was doing. And then, so fast forward a couple of years, I went into Forest, into year 3, and I was in class doing history or maths or whatever it was. And this random woman walks in to the classroom, speaks to my teacher, Mrs. Gardner or something, and asks to speak to me. And I was like, all the kids thought I was in trouble. I didn't know who this person was. She took me to the music block and gave me my first violin lesson, Miss Shepherd.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like Miss Shepherd.
Yeah.
Miss Shepherd, I remember.
So, and it turns out my mum and dad had booked me in for, like, to play the violin.
Surprise!
I had no idea. But I remember telling them about this experience I had when I was in year 2. And they must have just done that. So I was involved in music stuff for quite a while in school, quite a lot. Started with the violin. In year 4 we had a free year of an instrument, which I played the trumpet in, and then I moved over to the trombone after that, and I played that through school as well from year 5, I think, up to 18. And during that time I had 2 different heads of music. The first one was Mr. Palmer. I don't know if you remember.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Did he leave?
Yeah, he left. And he was replaced by somebody else. I'm not going to mention names because the person is still at that school. But Mr. Palmer was like really encouraging, and he was like, oh, you play the violin, why don't you just like pick up this double bass? It's kind of this similar thing. You'll be able to figure it out. Like the movements are pretty much similar. You just bow sideways and it's like 4 times the size or 10 times the size. But I love that. Like he instilled this sort of love of...
And confidence as well, I think.
Instilled confidence, definitely. Yeah. Because I was like, what is this massive instrument? It's like, you'll be fine, don't worry, you can do this. Like, you know how to do this, this and this. It's the same thing, just sideways and 3 times bigger than you are. That was there all the way through with him. He was always really encouraging, like inspired me to try new things, instilled confidence in me. As I went through my music career at school, that died away and kind of went.
Yeah.
When he left, it kind of went. It was there with some other music teachers. They were, they'd let me do random music solos on the piano or whatever, even though I don't play it. They were just like, why don't you just try it? And
yeah, there were some good teachers there.
Yeah, and they encouraged, like, when I was making music and stuff at school, they encouraged it. So it basically led us into this conversation about what actually makes a decent mentor. Mentor, tutor, teacher.
It's interesting as well because I think maybe a certain type of teacher worked for you, and then for someone else, like I think for me, maybe a lot of structure works very well. As you can probably imagine, I like sort of having very structured approach. But then for you, maybe it's more about the sort of organicness of it. I don't know.
It's always nicer for me when the mentor guides me to figuring it out myself, rather than just like, this is this, this is this, now go do this. It's like, well, pick this thing up. How do you find it? Like, what have you... It's like when I teach physics here, for example, something like moments and forces, I say, like, go over to the door, open it from the handle, now open it from near the hinge. Which one's easier?
What did you learn?
No, but that really works.
Exactly, yeah.
Like rather than just sitting at the desk the whole time, I'm like, okay, go over there, use the door, or the cupboard or whatever it is. I'll go over here and fire this elastic band from here to here and see like what difference do you notice. And it's like relating it to the real world.
Do you know what they call that? They call that guided discovery. So the person who's mentoring you or teaching you knows what you need to learn. Like, so they've got a structure in place. So something that they are hoping that you
figure out, out.
But then, and they put in place like a little task to get you to that point. But then they don't explicitly tell you.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of that.
Yeah. And I find that the kids, when I'm teaching them, are way more involved and like enthusiastic and grasp the concept a lot better than just being like, read this paragraph. If you had to give me like a list of, I don't know, 5 things that makes a good mentor, tutor, teacher,
what would they
be?
Well, first of all, I'd subdivide them. Okay. So there's relational things.
Okay.
Then there's technical knowledge.
So like knowledge, right, okay.
And then I think there's professionalism. So professional skills.
Okay.
That sort of go into that. And
then you're saying like there's other things underneath that. Which they will.
Yeah, and then right. From there you can subdivide them into those 5 separate things maybe.
So let's look at the relational stuff, because that's kind of where my story started.
Yeah. A good tutor should come at everything from a point of confidence and positivity. I have to believe that this person can understand this. If you don't have faith in your student, then they can't. Yeah. They won't have faith in themselves.
Yeah, I found this from experience.
So then that's the first thing.
Compassion, understanding.
Yeah. So understanding their particular circumstances, or some kids relate in different ways, and especially if you work with SEN.
For example, like having to explain something, you explain something in a way you think would work. Turns out that doesn't work for a particular person. You then have to find another angle.
Yes.
To sort of explain.
Yeah, and even present things slightly differently. So, for instance, if a child has dyslexia, their focus will be more scattered. In terms of your presentation on the board, not put too much on there. Constantly sort of ask and get feedback from the student.
Yeah.
To understand where they're at and their level of comprehension.
I think it's even like how you explain something. Back to that example of moments and forces and things. Like relating it to the real world does really help. Sometimes they might not get it in that way. So you might say, okay, imagine you're in a go-kart or something. What are the things that are going to be slowing you down? Or like you say, have you been skydiving? Have you been rock climbing? Have you been like related to stuff that they understand and what they've, been through before?
I think there's certain students that you've got to accept sometimes it's not about how much work they get done. It's more, you will have to spend a lot. Sometimes I spend whole lessons just on the explanation, just to get it.
Yeah.
Get it crystallized. And then the next week you go, okay, I'm going to review this because it's such an important concept. I think those are more or less the relational things. Obviously, you've got like asking them how their day is, that kind of thing. So
it's not. Yeah, exactly. It's not always about just the work. It's about
and then having fun in the class.
This is what I was going to say, actually.
Yeah. So those 2 are also relational.
I find that with my students, I never talk down to them.
Yeah.
I talk to them as if they're on my level. Talk to them as I would be talking to a friend, as I'm talking to you now.
That's a comment that I get a lot from parents. Yeah. Because they say, we really like the way that you work with him or her.
Yeah. Like I have Key Stage 3 on Monday, for example. They just ask for me all the time.
Yeah.
And the year 6s, or the year 7s now, actually.
Yeah.
But it's, because I laugh and joke with them, I talk about stuff that they're interested in, and I never talk down to them. And it just brings the best out of them.
It's very hard to do. Very difficult to do.
I find it harder to be the strict blah, blah, blah,
There's a sort of pressure in the back of your mind sometimes. And you're like, I need them to get this. They need to get this. They need to understand this.
So it's finding a balance between...
So I do feel, especially with, say, an 11 plus cohort or something where there's a lot of pressure, but then I've got to remind myself that it's more about the long game. So setting those sort of relational aspects is more important than you might think.
It just makes them more relaxed, and when they're more relaxed and
they learn better.
Freer, they learn better. They take more in. They absorb more information.
But then also, like, something that I've sort of learned to understand is they won't necessarily learn every single lesson perfectly.
No, they never do.
And that's something I've just got to take and go, okay, well, it's fine. All right, we'll come back to it. They review, they forget. We'll review again. They'll
it's normal.
Forget.
Think about how many things we forget. It's just human. So relational aspects are definitely very important. There's obviously things we haven't mentioned, like being empathetic, being patient and nurturing, and that sort of stuff. There's obviously more to it, but yeah.
So you could literally write a book about how to form good relationships.
Yeah, well, people have.
Yes.
So let's move on to the
technical aspects. So
fairly obvious.
This one's quite. So knowing the subject is important.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to explain each topic. That sort of is a subcategory within the subject, I suppose. So knowing the topic well. You need to understand examinations and curriculums.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things are actually possible to obtain with time and effort. So
yeah, but they're easier to obtain than like the
relational
stuff if you don't already have that. But I mean, it does come with time.
Yeah,
I've become better at it.
Yeah,
over the years.
But I think with these things, if you're able to put in the effort to research, then you can learn things to a good level.
Yeah.
Obviously, it helps having a degree or qualifications in the subject that you're targeting. So, for instance, Surev has 2 maths degrees.
Yeah, but not necessary, I'll be honest, because I don't.
Yeah. But like, for instance, you're not going to be teaching like A-level maths.
No, but I can teach, Key Stage 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
11 plus.
Yeah, it has, but you've reached a level of maths where you can actually teach those things. Whereas, like, obviously for like A-level or
that's
that kind of thing,
yeah.
you need those sort of deeper skills that you'd get at university. So that's kind of helpful. I think the knowledge of the curriculum and the exam is the main thing, because you could get someone who was intelligent, train them up on how to teach 11 plus and how to teach the various skills, and then they'd be prepared enough to actually understand how to take a cohort forward. But then something that you can't gain that easily is that experience in doing it. So it's not something that you can't magic like 5-10 years of experience.
Yeah, well, we're having this with somebody at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah. Like, first time I took foundation maths, it was a bit of a learning curve. Not subject-wise, but I think more in how the exam worked, and also teaching quite complex topics to people who struggle with maths, and thus why they're doing foundation. So
being able to break down into smaller, manageable chunks of information.
Even subjects that I thought, I know this inside out. I don't necessarily know it in the way that the students would understand it best.
Yeah.
So you have to relearn.
So back to that adaptability again, isn't it?
Yeah. You have to relearn things that you go, okay, it's like teaching Key Stage 1 as well. You obviously know all the content, but
you'd hope so.
but the way that you break it down has to be different, and thus there is a learning curve, even in something that you know.
So the third one was
professional skills. I think these are just sort of standard things that you should expect, but they're kind of important. So turning up for your class, preparing work ahead of time, making sure that you're well prepped, planning out student journeys so you understand where the student will go. That sort of merges with technical skills. So a lot of these things kind of merge together.
Delivering feedback, for example, to parents, which is relational.
Yeah, that's basically all 3. Yeah.
Technical, it's all 3.
You don't need to go so much into them, but they're probably the base. So at the base level, a tutor should have that. One of the most important things in education is that I actually think it's consistency. And
in everything.
Yeah, if a student doesn't have that, then relationally things will suffer. Their skills will suffer. And maintaining professionalism is about also maintaining a consistent product, as it were, or service. So that will feed into everything else. When you're in a class, you need to be careful about what you say,
what you share with other people,
and what you share with other people. So there's
it's like confidentiality,
a degree of confidentiality, yes,
right? Yeah,
that you need to maintain. I'd say from working for many years as a tutor, I'd initially would have said knowledge is probably the most important thing, but then now I kind of think it's more relational.
I think so,
and sort of cementing, because the fact is they won't learn from you if they don't resonate at all with you. Ultimately, I think the want to improve and deliver the best class possible, the desire to help people learn, and the passion for the subject,
and genuinely care about how their success, really.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. If a tutor came in and it was very clear to me, maybe they've got a few holes in some of the other aspects.
Yeah.
If they've got that passion and they really want to teach and they really want to do this job,
then they'll be able to.
Then with time and help, and support, they can get there.